Hey everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and this week's first question comes from Troubleshooter125, who asks, seriously, here's a question for you. Two, actually. Would you consider doing a behind-the-scenes video of how you put one of your pieces together? Alternatively, would you also consider doing a Steve Shives blooper reel? I am going to do a behind-the-scenes video on the making of an episode of Five Stupid Things at some point. Probably in a few more months when I get closer to doing the 100th video in the Five Stupid Things About series. That video I'll probably do a making of for that one, and that'll show my procedure, how I produce the Five Stupid Things videos, because it's always the same. And I don't think I could do a blooper reel because I don't usually save my raw video for very long. I keep it maybe for a few months, and then I usually end up deleting it, and I just keep the finished video. So I don't really have that many bloopers, and most of them aren't that funny anyway. It's just me drawing a blank when I'm trying to think of something to say, or fucking up a line that I've written for myself to say and making a stupid noise like bloop, and then going back and doing it again. It's not that much fun. Next one from Requiem Toxinnocence. Steve, what is your favorite crime drama movie? And why do you like that movie over other crime drama films? I was just wondering because I think crime drama films are some of the best produced, well written, and with some of the greatest actors playing in some very intense roles. Even very recently, movies have come out that will in a few years be considered classics. My favorite crime drama movie is probably, I can say it definitely is The French Connection. The French Connection is one of my very favorite films of any genre ever. It's just a huge favorite of mine. And why do I like it better than other crime dramas? Because it functions well as a meat and potatoes crime drama movie. Like, it works good as a detective movie, as an action movie, a procedural, but it also has deeper concerns. I love the ending of The French Connection, where Gene Hackman's character, Popeye Doyle, goes running off into the mist to pursue the drug kingpin that he's been pursuing for the whole movie. And just that idea that the movie was about the idea of the chase, the idea of pursuit and obsession, and it really appeals to me and really works on a really strong level. And yeah, I agree with you. I think crime drama done well is one of the most powerful genres of film that there is. Some of my favorite films are crime dramas or police dramas. There's just, first of all, the idea of cops and criminals, or good guys versus bad guys. There's just essential drama to that built in. There's drama built into the job of a police officer or the life of a criminal that you don't need to add anything. You just need to depict it. And when it's done well, for instance, in The French Connection, or in a film that actually reminds me a lot of The French Connection, from about 10 years ago or so, called Narc, with Ray Liotta and Jason Patric. Great film. And you could just go on forever listing great crime drama films. It's definitely a favorite genre of mine. Someone's mom, what smell triggers your favorite memory? I think it would probably be the smell of fresh cut grass. I love the smell of fresh cut grass, and the memory that it triggers isn't so much a specific memory. It's more, it evokes a feeling of being a child and playing outside during the summer, running around I was lucky enough when I was growing up that we had a nice big backyard, and it reminds me of playing in the backyard with my brother or with friends, or also of being in school when the weather was still nice, and getting to go out for recess after lunch, and you wait all day for recess because you're stuck inside in school, and then it's a beautiful day outside and you get to go out for recess for half an hour or whatever, and when it's a nice day, and especially if they've just cut the grass on the playground, that smell was like one of the first things that I would notice. The smell and the hot feeling of the sun, and yeah. So yeah, the smell of fresh cut grass always sort of puts me in mind of that, and of more recent experiences as well. My wife and I we live close to Antietam Battlefield, and there's a lot of open space, and we've gone picnicking there. And if it's a nice day, you can smell the grass, and it's just, yeah, the smell of fresh cut grass just brings up all kinds of pleasant memories for me. My1,000faces asks 2 questions. What's the name of the little jingle song you use, if it has one? And the second, as a fellow film buff type, what's your opinion on the film versus digital debate? And have you seen the Keanu Reeves documentary Side by Side on the issue? Emigdio's back. What car do you drive? I drive a 2000 Chevy Silverado, a pickup truck. Firefly 4F4. How would you deal with a friend who starts exposing creationist viewpoints, does so by continually misrepresenting what the actual evolutionary explanations are, and continually moves the goalposts when you show the misrepresentation to be inaccurate? Well, first I would commend my friend for following the example of other creationists so closely, because that's pretty much what they all do. If it's not something that you can get past and you want to stay friends with this person, and the conversations you have about this topic become something other than enjoyable, then I would suggest talking about other shit. I mean, there's... I'm the type of person, I can talk about religion and atheism and creationism and science and evolution and all that stuff. I can talk about that stuff all day and never get upset about it. You know, never take it personally. I mean, things might get a little excited, things might get a little heated now and then, depending on where the conversation goes, but I'm not going to wind up like angry at the person. I'm not going to wind up like infuriated or frustrated or whatever. It's fun to talk about to me, but if talking with this person about these things ceases to be fun and it becomes a strain on your friendship, the only advice I can give is to just try not to talk about it. Because if the person you're talking to is a brick wall and they aren't hearing anything you're saying, and it's one of those cases where you correct them bluntly about something they're demonstrably wrong about over and over again, and they still do it and they still say it, I mean, you just have to accept it. There's not a whole lot you can do. If you want to remain friends with the person, you just have to accept it, and if it stops being fun, you find other shit to talk about. I wish there was something else I could say, but that's about the best I could do in that situation. Practical Magic 9, what was the first thing you wrote and when, at what age? The thing I always remember, the thing I think back on, is I think it was a birthday card that I made for my father when I was really young, maybe 4 years old, 5 years old, I mean very young. And I wrote something in the card for my dad, and it was a very heartfelt message about how much I love my dad, and I think I ironically enough, considering how things have turned out, I think it also included a prayer. You know, like I was asking God to take care of my dad or something like that. And it was I was a little kid, and it was very sweet, and it was and my dad was very, very moved by it. And I remember that. I remember that something I wrote was very moving to someone, and moving to someone that I cared about, and moving to someone that I cared about in the way that I hoped it would be. You know, I kind of made that connection. And I think that is probably when I decided, whether consciously or not, that I wanted to be a writer, when I saw the power that words you put together can have on other people, and the value of thoughts well expressed, you know what I mean? So that was when I that's the moment certainly that I look back on now, retrospectively, and say that's when I became a writer. And I don't know if Mom or Dad even still has that card. I don't know if it even still exists. And I don't remember anything specific about what it said other than the general message, the general tone of it. But yeah, that birthday card for my father when I was probably 4 years old was the first thing that I ever wrote. Lex Services. Do you believe it is okay for one group of people to be completely disallowed the right to defend itself from another group of people under any and all circumstances? If not, how can you defend feminism, which says that men cannot yell at or hit a woman under any conditions, regardless of what the women are doing to them? Sounds like somebody has an axe to grind. Let me answer both of your questions. The answer to your first question is no. I don't believe it is okay for one group of people to be completely disallowed the right to defend themselves against another group under any and all circumstances. And the answer to the second question is I do defend feminism, and I do consider feminism in general and the goals of feminism in general to be a good thing, because I do not see feminism in the way that you are characterizing it here. I don't think that feminism actually says that men can't ever yell at or hit a woman under any conditions, regardless of what the woman is doing to them. The goal of feminism is not to castrate men. The goal of feminism is to advocate for equality among the sexes, to advocate for men and women to be treated equally under the law, to be afforded equal opportunities in the workplace, to be fairly compensated for their work, regardless of their sex, to be afforded the same treatment and the same opportunities in work and in life and in our culture, etc. That's the point of feminism. The point of feminism is equality, not feminine superiority, not male or masculine inferiority. That's feminism. And when you talk like that, you sound like nothing so much as an American Christian climbing up on his cross and complaining about how persecuted he feels because gay people are allowed to go outside, or because atheists are allowed to speak out against his Christian beliefs. That's what you sound like as a man complaining about feminism, especially when you mischaracterize feminism so egregiously. I agree with you in the sense that there certainly is now, here in the United States in the year 2013, and for some time now, there has been a cultural taboo against men hitting women. And it goes back a very long time, but for a lot of that time, what you must understand is, even though it was stated that, well, men shouldn't hit women, husbands abusing their wives was quietly tolerated, widespread. And now we realize that that was a very, very bad thing. Now we realize that the sort of suffocating authority that husbands used to have over their wives, which was accepted by everybody as just the way life was, just the way things worked, that was a very bad thing. That was a wrong that needed to be corrected. And in large measure, that wrong, that subservience of women to men, is what gave rise to the feminist movement in the first place. That's what feminists were pushing against. They were saying we shouldn't have to live this way. And yes, we should have the same rights as men. We should be able to vote. We should be able to work and get paid the same wage that a man gets paid. We should be able to have the same opportunities that a man has. And we should be able to live a life free of intimidation and abuse from men. That was a part of our culture, a very large part of our culture for a very long time. And if we do have a cultural taboo now that seems to favor women more than men when it comes to domestic violence, consider that to be a reaction to the way that it was before, the horrible way that it was before, and the horrible way that it still is for many people today, unfortunately, in this country. Man-on-woman spousal abuse is still a huge, horrible problem in this country. And I'm not saying that woman-on-man spousal abuse isn't serious, or that it doesn't happen, or that a woman who beats up her husband shouldn't be just as legally liable to pay for those crimes as a man who does that to his wife. I'm not saying that. But look, my wife works for a public library. She has people, women, mothers, who come in relatively often, unfortunately, who are asking for information about where the CASA shelter is, who are trying to escape from an abusive relationship, from an abusive husband or boyfriend, and they can't get in because there's a waiting list, because the CASA shelter is full. There's no room for them, and there's a waiting list. And in light of that, it's really, really difficult for me to have any sympathy at all for what you're complaining about in your question. And if you want, you can just chalk that up to insensitivity on my part. Terry James, as a wrestling fan, which show did you prefer during the Monday Night Wars, and do you think fans are overly enamored with technical wrestlers? Oh, I love wrestling questions. And Joffrey500 also asked a wrestling question. He wanted to know how old I was when I found out that wrestling was a show rather than a legitimate sport. And the answer to that question is, I think I was about 12. As for Terry James's question, during the Monday Night Wars, that was when I sort of came back into wrestling. That got me hooked again. I had not watched very much of it up till about 1990, late '97. I guess around the time of when Hollywood Hogan and Sting were finally in the last stretch toward their big blow off match at Starrcade '97. That was about the time that I came back in, and it was the NWO stuff that got me back in. It was hearing about Hulk Hogan's heel turn and the curiosity about that. And then, so I started watching Nitro, and I favored Nitro. But then eventually I started watching Raw too, and I got back into WWF. And by the time it was over, I was watching both shows regularly. There were very few weeks where I watched one show but didn't watch the other. I watched both shows, and I didn't really favor one over the other. In terms of viewership, in terms of quality, it went back and forth. By the time Stone Cold Steve Austin was ensconced as the top guy in WWF, I was favoring them, because by that time WCW had really just gone off the reservation. But it went back and forth. I mean, by the time WCW folded, it was just awful. It was just a horrible, horrible show. But I watched it every week anyway, because I was a wrestling fan, and I have a sickness. Richard Nagy asks, do you feel about Christians, theists, that they are somehow, stupid? No, I don't. I don't think that Christians or theists are necessarily stupid. I think that the things they believe are stupid. I'm comfortable saying that. But no, most people I know in my life that I've grown up with, that I've known for years, that are my friends, that are my family, that are people I respect, are Christians of one stripe or another. And some of the most impressively intelligent people that I know are Christians. I see it as they just have a blind spot. And I try not to even see it that way so much, because that sounds kind of arrogant. I think it's something that we very strongly disagree on. I really think I'm right. I don't think there's any reason to think there's a God. I think my atheism is correct. They think their Christianity is correct, and perhaps they have very good reasons for that, so they think. I don't think it's a matter of intelligence. I don't, and I think it's a difference of opinion. I think it's a difference of perspective. But no, I mean, yeah, of course I've met Christians who are stupid. I've met atheists who are stupid. I've met atheists who have horrible reasons for saying that they're atheists. I've met atheists who may not actually be atheists if you actually parse what they really believe, or what they say they believe. And I've met Christians who have absolutely horrible reasons for being Christians. I've met many Christians who basically admit that they believe because they're scared to not believe. And I think that's a stupid reason for believing. But even they, in general, may not be stupid people. No, I think it's a big mistake to think of Christians in general as, oh, well, they just believe that shit because they're stupid. I don't think that's it. I don't think that's a fair statement to make. Pyro Manuel 69. What do you think of movies where all nationalities speak the same language with more or less accent? For example, in The Hunt for Red October, where both Russians and Americans speak English but still can't understand each other. Also, what do you think of dubbing a film? Well, I think that first bit is just a concession for the audience. If you're making an American film that is primarily going to be pitched at an American audience, it just makes sense commercially, if not artistically, to have the characters speak in a language that most of the people going to see the movie will be able to understand. And yet, it doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense to establish. 'Cause the thing about Hunt for Red October is, I believe when we first meet the Russians, they are speaking Russian, and then there's a turn where they begin speaking English. And I think that is to inform us as the audience that they are actually speaking Russian. Even though we hear them as speaking English, they are actually speaking Russian. And that's why the Americans and the Russians can't understand each other. Because even though we hear the Russians as speaking English, they're actually speaking Russian. It's sort of like an audio version of a subtitle. And like I say, it's a convention to allow the audience to not have to read subtitles. It's a device that I don't really have a huge problem with it. And as for dubbing films, dubbing foreign films I'm not a fan of. I would much prefer to have the original audio, the original voices, and to read subtitles. because I feel like if you overdub the voice of an actor in a foreign language film, then you lose a huge element of that performance. And I prefer not to do that. You know, one of the big examples that I think of is the film Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which I watched in the theater, dubbed into, not dubbed. I saw the subtitled version in the theater and just loved it. I thought it was just beautiful. It's still one of my favorite films. And then many months, maybe even years later, just for a lark, I put on my DVD of Crouching Tiger and I played the dubbed version instead of the subtitled version. And it really felt wrong. I mean, it just felt like a different movie. It felt wrong. And I missed the original performances. I missed the original voices. Even though I can't understand the language they're speaking, they're still communicating. They're still conveying emotions and conveying character through their voices. And you miss that when you dub a film. So if the choice is between dubbing and subtitles, I would choose subtitles every single time. That's it for this week, everybody. Before we leave, let's do a shout out here. The shout out this week goes to forgodandjesus. This is a very funny channel, an excellent channel that I actually just discovered this past week. And forgodandjesus does really short videos that tell you how to pray for things. But while he's telling you how to pray for things and showing you comforting images of Jesus and Christian artwork, he's also sticking little subliminal messages in there. And it's really funny. The videos are all short, about 30 seconds long. They're really funny. It's stuff about how to pray for forgiveness, how to pray for greater wealth, things like that. And they won't take up a lot of your time, and they're really funny. And I highly recommend the channel, forgodandjesus. Check out that channel. Subscribe to it if it's your type of thing, if you think it's funny, because it's definitely my type of thing. I think it's great. So that is it for this week for You Had to Ask. I will be back next week to answer more of your questions. But for that to happen, you have to ask. Did that wake you up? Did you hear that? Oh, wake up! You have to ask. So why did I do that? That makes no sense at all. You have to ask, so please leave a comment on this video with your question, with your comment, with whatever you want to hear me talk about, whatever you want to know. No topics are off limits. Ask me anything about anything, and I will do my best to answer next time. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you then.